Welcome to the False Prophet channel, and this is Brother Jacob, and this is the False Prophet channel where we get Islam destroyed and the false prophet of Islam, Muhammad, destroyed on a regular basis. I should add to the intro, we also get Hebrew Israelites destroyed, Black Hebrew Israelites, that's right. And in today's video, we got a very special clip. There is a Hebrew Israelite by the name of Tazaryach. He calls himself a captain, a title that he has that I do not respect. But for the video's sake, he calls himself Captain Tazaryach of the ISUPK. For those who don't know, the ISUPK, that's an acronym that stands for the Israelite School of United Practical Knowledge. It's a cult that teaches that salvation is only for Blacks, Native Americans, and Hispanics. And they deny that Jesus is God. They don't believe that Jesus is the Most High God. They deny the virgin birth. The entire cult is everything they teach is false. Nothing they say is real. They are a cult. They are misleading people. It's a racist cult. But nevertheless, God gave me the opportunity tonight to debunk one of their top figures in the camp. His name is Captain Tazaryach. And without further ado, because I hate going to videos when the person is doing a lot of talking, and I know you guys, you just want to see the video. So without further ado, I'm going to show you guys how I destroyed the Black Hebrew Israelite doctrine of salvation is only for Israelites. And I used Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 through 8. So sit back, enjoy, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get right into it. And and by the way, before I play it, I changed my voice because I've engaged Captain Tazaryach on Clubhouse, right? For those who don't know, Clubhouse is an app where you can open up rooms and you can engage with people on different biblical topics. And I have debunked this guy so many times. So when he hears my voice, or if he's in Clubhouse and I'm up on the stage, he always runs because he don't like to have to engage with me because I always get him debunked. And after you see this video, you will see why he runs and why I had to change my voice just so I can get in and engage with him. But I'm going to let you guys check it out. So let me hit play and let's get started.
The false prophet, what you got with those Osama bin Laden? What's up?
Yeah, man. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. You got a question or comment?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have a question. Can you read Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 through 9?
Can you do you have it in front of you?
Yes, I have it in front of me.
No problem. So you can read it. I mean, I'll get it with you, but you can read it and then present whatever question or comment you have on it. And you said, can you just call out the scripture one more time?
That's Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 through 8.
Galatians 6, 7 through 8. Go ahead, read it.
All right, starting at verse 7, it says, Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
Okay.
For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption.
Okay.
But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting.
Okay.
So basically, in verse 7, it gives you basically the universal principle of karma. Because every man reaps what he sows. So since verse 7
7
lays
lays
down a
down a
premise
premise
that
that
can't be
can't be
broken.
broken.
Then
Then
verse
verse
8,
8,
which
which
can't
can't
contradict verse
contradict verse
7,
7,
proves
proves
that
that
anyone can
anyone can
receive
receive
salvation,
salvation
because it
because it
says,
says,
he that
he that
soweth to the
soweth to the
Spirit
Spirit
shall of the
shall of the
Spirit
Spirit
reap
reap
life
life.
everlasting.
Hey, so when you say any man can receive salvation, is the subject about salvation, or is the
Well,
subject about God not being mocked?
the subject is a man reaps what he sows,
Right. So how do you incorporate that into salvation?
because
When you,
verse 8 says that if a man soweth to the Spirit, shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting.
I'm
So
gonna
if a
repeat my,
man,
I got you, but I want to repeat my question to you so you can
okay,
want to understand what I'm saying. You said this means that anybody can receive salvation, but this ain't about salvation.
well,
Even if you start at verse 1. In verse 1 it says, "Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted." That's the subject. There is nothing about salvation in the subject.
here's the thing. I could have a narrative. I could be talking about any specific type of story, and within that story, I could say that gravity is the force that holds everything together.
So let me give you an example.
So,
Right?
So let me stop right now. Stop right there for a moment. So notice that I read Galatians 6, 7, and 8. Okay. I delivered the cut to his doctrine. He saw the problem right off the bat. If you look at the white guy that's sitting on the left side of him, you can see this guy looks very nervous because he's listening to the point that I'm making and he knows that I'm dropping a bomb. Okay. So Tazaryach is used to debating low level people. He's not used to debating someone like Brother Jacob. Okay. So he creates a straw man argument, and his position was that verse 1 in chapter 6 of Galatians is not talking about salvation. And listen, he had to deflect, and it's a poor position that he made. And then, as you notice, I was telling him that if someone came up with a narrative, and in that narrative they were speaking about gravity, and if they said that gravity is the force that holds everything together on the planet, it keeps us from just floating up in the sky, right? He cut me off when I was making that example, but I wanted to say that so you guys could hear what I was about to say that the Bible, any chapter in the Bible, it speaks on a variety of things, but he's trying to make it seem as if every chapter in the Bible is talking about one subject from top to bottom, as if you can't read throughout the Bible topics in a chapter switching from one thing to the next. But it's not switching in a choppy way like the Quran. It's very consistent and it has a flow and a rhythm to it. But and even the Bible itself is talking about a plethora of different subject matter. So he's creating a straw man argument, trying to deflect from the cut that was already made. But we shall continue.
so even though,
As you saying, what a man, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. Like I know that you're golden swords. Like
well,
you sowed that into your voice. Like you try to change it up and switch it up, but I know that that's golden swords. So now you can reap being able to have an intelligent conversation, or you can reap being an idiot.
and you can reap sowing to the Spirit and receive salvation, because every man
You
reaps what he
cannot.
sows.
So you
Verse
have to
8,
show me.
verse 8 can't contradict verse 7, sir. It's no way out of it.
You're absolutely correct.
Okay,
I
so
never
I'm
said
right
one
then.
second. One second.
You got
I
to
never
destroy,
said
sir.
you got to be quiet for a second. I never said verse 7 contradicts verse 8. That's not what I said. That never came out.
Notice he himself even agrees that I am correct, that verse 8 in Galatians 6, 7, and 8, it can't contradict verse 7, which says, whatever a man sows, he will reap. And in verse 8, it says, if a man sows of the Spirit to the Spirit, he will reap life everlasting, which is eternal life. And verse 7 applies to every man. Every man will reap what he sowed. And he just agreed with me that I was right.
My mouth. What you tried to do was input salvation into the text when the subject itself is not salvation. And this is what Christian lunatic nuts do. What they do is they're so obsessed with trying to counter the Israelites that believe that salvation is only for Israel. They'll take any verse in the Bible, and if it's something where a man can do anything, they make it about salvation. When this is simply, if a man is overtaken in a fault, if a man has an issue, you restore that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read verses 1 through 6 before we get to 7, so that people can get the context. So now it says, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. So just like you could be tempted and might fall, you see a brother that's in a fault, you restore him in the spirit of meekness. And don't nobody ever mistake meekness for talking like a sissy. That's not what it's talking about, but it's
So as you see now, he's deflecting and he's making these personal ad hominem attacks. This is what Hebrew Israelites do. So what he's doing right now is a tactic of moving the cards around on the table in effort to make the people who is watching the massacre unfold forget about the cut that is being made to his doctrine. He knows it inside of himself, and the white Hispanic guy that's sitting next to him, he knows it as well, that they are getting obliterated. And this was live on air. So he's trying to make this argument now that my point isn't valid because the context of Galatians 6 is not talking about salvation, which is totally untrue. Because even within the statements that he made about correcting a brother who was in error, well, why do you correct someone? To get them back on the right path. The right path of what? The right path that leads to salvation. So even within his rebuttals, it's supporting my stance, even though he's trying to act like what I'm saying is out of context, when clearly it's not. Because verse 7, which comes right before verse 8, proves everything that I'm saying. So let's continue.
Talking about having a sense of humility. You don't want to beat the brother down. Verse 2, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Now we're talking about law. We still ain't got nothing about salvation yet. For if a man think himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. But let every man prove his own work, that when he shall have rejoicing in himself alone and not another. For every man shall bear his own burden. Still not talking about salvation. Verse 6, let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teacheth in all good things. Verse 7, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that he shall also reap. So you have to show me where in what we just read is it talking about salvation. I'm waiting.
Now notice that he stopped reading, and I'm going to address it in the video and you will see it. He stopped reading at verse 7 where it says, whatsoever a man soweth, he will also reap. He did that purposely because he know if he would have continued reading to verse 8, when it talks about a man sowing of the Spirit will reap life everlasting, he know that my point, he would be making my point come clear. So that's why he failed to read verse 8, and I'm going to call him out about it. Okay, sir, the verses that you read were not
specifically talking about accepting Christ in your heart. It was more so talking about helping your brothers when they fall. The chapter is talking about a variety of things. You can have chapters in the Bible, sir, that touch on different topics, but you're making it seem like the entire chapter has to be talking specifically about salvation in order for my point to be true, which is a straw man argument, sir.
That's not what
And
I
that's
said.
why you didn't. Sorry, I'm still talking, sir. I didn't
That's
speak
not
while
what
you
I
were
said.
speaking,
You can't, but I
but
don't
I'm
want you to
explaining what you
misrepresent
did,
me.
sir.
I
I'm
did not
explaining
do
what you
anything
did,
but
sir. You
show.
did do that,
You
sir.
said that the
Then why
chapter
didn't
is
you read
talking
verse
about.
8, sir?
You said
Why
the
didn't you read
chapter
verse
is
8?
talking. You said the
Why did you
chapter
stop at
is talking.
7 and didn't read verse
Stop
8,
talking for a
sir?
second. Stop talking. You
He's
said
getting
So notice I'm asking him. And as you saw, he interrupted me because he sees that I'm doing a good job. And what's starting to happen at this point of the dialogue between me and him, he has lost total control of what his show is about. See, he thought I was going to be some prop and some little dummy, some crash test dummy that he could crash out on and make himself look big. But it didn't work out in his favor. So then he started to interrupt me. But even though he was interrupting me, notice I kept my poise throughout the entire duration. I didn't try to do evil for evil. I didn't try to call him names just because he was using ad hominems against me. I stayed on my square. I remain unshakable, and I'm constantly hammering to him. As you heard me, I said, "Sir, why didn't you read verse 8?" And notice he's just going to keep yapping like he didn't even hear anything that I said.
cut
chapter.
everyone.
You said the chapter is talking about a variety of things. We haven't even got past verse 8. You inputted salvation into verse 8, and we're not, and that's you straw manning, making it about salvation, which is why when I read, and I only said I was reading verses 1 through 6, I read verse 7 as a favor. But when we read those verses, there's nothing about salvation in those verses at all. Now, if we read past verse 8, and let's say if it starts talking about something else, you got on this stage and said you wanted to read Galatians 6, 7, verse 8, and imputed salvation into verse 8, and that was a lie.
Sir, it wasn't a lie.
And
Sir, the
show me in
entire
those first 8 verses, I'm a mute. Show
okay.
me in those first 8 verses that the subject is salvation for other nations. You have
Okay, sir. Sir, that's very silly. You're asking a man to show you something in verses that he didn't initially read.
no problem. I'll remix the question.
I
In
read
verses
verses.
7, I'm gonna remix the question. In verses 7 and 8 that you did read, show where it's talking about salvation for all nations.
So notice what he just did again for the second time. He had to correct himself because what I said was he's trying to put me on the hot seat to answer questions about verses that I did not even initially read. When I came up on his panel, I read Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 through 8 to prove my point. Then he took it upon himself to create a straw man argument as if that was my argument. He tried to turn it into show me where a nation can have salvation. That's not even the point of what I was making. The point that I was making was against what they teach that only Israelites can have salvation, meaning only an Israelite man can have eternal life, but no other man of another race outside of who they deem to be Israelites can have salvation. And I proved my point thoroughly with those 2 verses. That's all I needed. So now we're going to listen to the rest of my rebuttal against what he just said after he had to agree that my position was right when he questioned me wrongly about verses that I didn't even read. So let's continue.
Okay. In the verses that I read, it's talking about an individual man. An individual man. It's not talking about nations, it's talking about an individual. Because when you read it, it clearly says, for he is a singular, he is a singular pronoun, sir. That's not an entire nation. It says that for he that soweth to his flesh, his is a possessive singular pronoun, sir. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And we know that verse 8 cannot contradict verse 7, which says, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. So if a man soweth to the Spirit, of the Spirit shall he reap life everlasting. One cannot cancel out the other, sir. So, sir, you just got to accept it and stop trying to fight against it, sir. It's not going to help you. You may as well just accept that this is a universal law that cannot be broken, because what a man soweth, he shall reap. Verse 8, as I stated, cannot contradict verse 7, sir. That's the cut, sir, in ISUPA language. That's a cut, sir.
Nigga said ISUPA. Nigga can't even don't even got the
I
acronym.
said ISUPK
You
language,
said
sir.
A, nigga.
So as you see, he got destroyed. There's no need to play the rest. If you want to see the rest of what was said, it just turned to a bunch of psychobabble on his behalf, and you know, just going into the ad hominem tirade. So the last statement that I made, that's is suffice enough. And before I end this video, I'm going to break down the verse so you guys can see it clearly of how it destroys their salvation. Is only for Israelites doctrine that they teach. So let's pull up the verse right now. To him. And this proves that salvation is for everybody. And I wanted to go to this verse so everyone could see it clearly. Okay? So there will be no confusion about this. When you go to the book of Galatians, chapter 6, and let's scroll down to verse 7 and 8. Let me highlight it. Let's highlight verse 7 and 8. Now let's go through this. Okay? Verse 7. Be not deceived. Let's start over. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So, as everyone can see, verse 7 makes it clear that a man reaps what he sows. Now, this applies to every man. It don't matter if you are a Jew or a Gentile, an Israelite or a non-Israelite. Whatever you sow, you will reap, right? And this is just like, okay, this language that's being used right in this verse is metaphorical. It's like metaphorical language. Let me explain. Like if a farmer planted an apple seed, an apple tree is going to grow because he sowed the apple seed, he put it in the ground, and he's going to reap an apple tree. Now that's true for every race of man. It don't matter if a Chinese farmer plants an apple seed, that Chinese farmer will reap an apple tree. If a white farmer plants an apple seed, he will reap an apple tree. If a black farmer, if an Israelite farmer, if a Gentile farmer plants an apple seed, they will reap what they sowed. So in this passage of scripture, just like how Jesus, he taught in parables, the same parabolic language is being employed in verse 7. So we all understand that every man, no matter of your race, you will reap what you sow. Now, verse 8 says, for he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So, verse 7 makes it clear that a man will reap what he sows. Verse 8 can't contradict verse 7. So if verse 7 applies to every man, no matter of race, nationality, creed, or color, then verse 8 must stick to what verse 7 says when it says that he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So that means any man who sows to the Spirit shall reap life everlasting. So this debunks the Black Hebrew Israelite doctrine that salvation is only for Israelites, because we see clearly that you reap what you sow, and that applies to every man. And if a man of any race sows to the Spirit, he shall reap life everlasting. And life everlasting equates to salvation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why Tazaryach was so buckled. That's why he had to play all of them games. And I'm gonna address something that he said too. He was like, the context is not about salvation. How stupid is that? Because when you're talking about reaping what you sow, that pertains to everything. So if you sow something that reaps to salvation, you will receive salvation. So I don't see how he was saying what I was saying was out of context, when reaping what you sow deals with everything that you sow. So if you sow a good seed, you're going to reap something good. If you sow something bad, you will reap something bad. So for him to say I was out of context, it just shows that he was clearly outmatched, and his darkness got exposed by the light. And I'm just glad God gave me the opportunity to highlight the obvious hole in their doctrine that Galatians 6, verse 7 through 8 does to their doctrine. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And like always, this is the False Prophet channel, and this is Brother Jacob, and this is the False Prophet channel, where we get Islam destroyed and the false prophet of Islam, Muhammad, destroyed on a regular basis. Hope you learned something from the video. And with that, I'd like to say peace to everybody, and I'm out.